Horror gaming is having a serious moment right now. And I don't mean the usual jump scare stuff. I mean games that get under your skin. Games that make you uncomfortable in ways you didn't expect. Games you think about after you put the controller down. These 10 upcoming horror games, coming in 2026 and 2027, look like exactly that kind of experience. Let's get into it. La Divina Commedia is one of the most ambitious horror projects currently in development, and the concept alone is enough to make it stand out immediately. It's based on Dante's Inferno, the actual 14th century poem by Dante Alighieri. 9 circles of hell, each one worse than the last, and someone decided that was the perfect foundation for a horror game. They were right. From what's been shown, the game takes you through a version of hell that feels genuinely designed around the original text, not just using the title as decoration. The environments look twisted and wrong in that specific way that great horror always manages to achieve. Dark corridors, broken architecture, things that shouldn't exist standing very still in the distance. The atmosphere is heavy from the first second of footage. There's no music trying to tell you how to feel, just silence, and then something moving. Combat exists, but this doesn't look like a game you fight your way through. It looks like a game you survive. The difference matters a lot in horror. If the final product commits to that vision the same way the early footage suggests, La Divina Commedia could be one of the most genuinely unsettling experiences horror gaming has seen in years. This one is already on the watch list. Haunted Bloodlines is a gothic horror RPG that puts a lot of weight on player choice and the kind of slow-building dread that most horror games don't bother with anymore. The premise centers on a cursed bloodline, a family history soaked in dark deals and old supernatural debts that are finally coming due. You're not just a survivor stumbling through horror. You're someone with a direct connection to whatever is happening. And that personal stake changes how everything feels. The world pulls heavily from gothic fiction. Manor houses, underground crypts, fog-covered countryside. The visual language is very deliberate. This is horror that takes its atmosphere seriously. What separates it from straightforward horror games is the RPG layer underneath. Choices matter here. How you handle situations, who you trust, what you know about your own family history. All of it feeds into how the story develops. Some paths close, others open. The horror shapes itself around your decisions. Combat is there when you need it, but the game seems more interested in tension and discovery than in making you fight your way through rooms. Details are still limited, but what's been shown has a clear and confident identity. Haunted Bloodlines looks like the kind of gothic horror that fans of the genre have been waiting for. Kumarn the Wandering Spirit is pulling from a part of the world that horror games almost never touch, and that alone makes it fascinating. South Asian mythology and folklore is incredibly rich with dark stories, spirits, and supernatural concepts that Western games have barely scratched the surface of. Kumarn seems to understand that and is building its entire identity around it. You play as a wandering spirit navigating a world where the boundary between the living and the dead has become dangerously thin. The environments shown so far feel genuinely different. Ancient temples, dense jungle, villages that feel abandoned in that specific way that suggests something went very wrong here. The horror here isn't about monsters jumping out at you. It's about atmosphere and wrongness. The sense that the world you're moving through isn't behaving the way it should. Sounds that come from the wrong direction. Shapes in the dark that disappear when you look directly at them. That kind of horror is harder to pull off than loud scares. But when it works, it stays with you much longer. Kumarn is still early in development, but the concept and the early visuals already suggest something genuinely special is being built here. Keep this one on your radar. The Blood of Dawnwalker comes from former Witcher developers, and the moment you know that, the expectations go up significantly. This is an open-world RPG with a vampire twist and a time system that changes how the whole game works. During the day, you move through the world normally, but a lot of your abilities are locked. You're limited. Careful, playing it safe. Then night falls, and everything flips. You're faster, stronger, more dangerous. But you also stand out, you draw attention. And in a world that's already hostile, drawing attention is a risk you have to manage. The time mechanic is where things get genuinely interesting. You have a limited window to save your family. Every quest you complete pushes time forward. Wandering around doesn't cost you anything, but the moment you start doing things that matter, the clock moves. And there's no clear main quest pointing you to what matters most. On your first run especially, you're making choices without full information. You won't know what was critical until it's already too late. That kind of design creates real tension. Not jump scares, not monsters, just the quiet pressure of making decisions in the dark without enough knowledge. The Blood of Dawnwalker is set for 2026, and it already looks like something special.
The Midnight Walkers is a co-op horror game built around one very specific idea.
The night is not safe, and you can't survive it alone. Up to 4 players move through dark, atmospheric environments where the threat isn't just the creatures hunting you, it's the darkness itself. Light is a resource here. Managing it, protecting it, sharing it between players, that becomes as important as anything else you do. The game pulls from that classic survival horror DNA, where resources are always running low and every decision has a cost. But the co-op layer adds something most horror games don't have. The fear is shared. The mistakes are shared. And when someone gets separated in the dark, that moment hits differently when it's a real person. Environments look dense and carefully built. Old buildings, underground spaces, places that feel like they were designed specifically to make you feel small and exposed at the same time. The creature design shown so far is genuinely unsettling. Things that move wrong, behave unpredictably, and don't give you clear signals about what they're about to do. The Midnight Walkers is building toward a 2026 release, and for horror fans who want something to play with friends, this one is shaping up to be exactly that. Hellraiser is one of the most iconic horror franchises ever created. The Cenobites, the puzzle box. The whole idea that pleasure and pain are the same thing taken far enough. It's dark mythology that has never been done justice in a game. Until now, apparently. Clive Barker's Hellraiser revival is bringing that world into a modern game experience. And from what's been shown, it looks like the people making this actually understand what makes Hellraiser work. It's not about gore for the sake of gore. It's about the philosophy behind it. The idea that there are beings out there for whom human concepts of suffering and pleasure are simply different points on the same scale. That concept is genuinely disturbing when a game commits to it. The visual design already looks faithful to the source material. Twisted architecture, chains, that specific kind of wrong that Clive Barker's world always carries with it. Gameplay details are still coming, but the tone and direction are clear. This is being treated as a serious adaptation, not a quick cash-in on a famous name. If they follow through on that promise, Hellraiser Revival could be the game this franchise has deserved for 30 years, one to watch very closely.
ILL is the kind of horror game that makes you genuinely uncomfortable just watching the footage.
And that's exactly the point. This is first-person survival horror built in Unreal Engine 5, and it is not holding back on the body horror and nightmare imagery. The developers described it clearly. They want it to feel lonely, hopeless, and wrong, like you're somewhere you should never have ended up. The setting pulls from Eastern European reality, a lost, grim place that feels grounded before the horror twists it into something awful. That grounding is important. Horror hits harder when the world feels real first. Gameplay mixes exploration, crafting, and survival with serious resource management. Ammo is not something you'll have a lot of. Inventory space is limited, and it matters. Every item you decide to carry is a decision, and the environments react to what you do. Restore power in one area, and something shifts somewhere else, usually for the worse. That kind of dynamic tension keeps the dread moving, instead of letting it settle into predictability. Visually, it is one of the most detailed horror games ever shown. Unreal Engine 5 doing things that genuinely look photorealistic, even when what it's showing you is grotesque. ILL is planned for 2026 on PC, Xbox Series, and PS5. If you have any tolerance for real horror, this one is unmissable. Shadow Man is a name that longtime gaming fans will remember with a lot of affection. The original games from the late 90s and early 2000s had a genuinely unique identity, a dark, supernatural world built around voodoo mythology, the boundary between life and death, and a protagonist who existed in both. Shadow Man: Dark Legacy is bringing all of that back. The new game follows Michael Leroy, the latest in a line of Shadow Men, warriors bound to a dark power that gives them the ability to walk between the living world and dead side, the realm of the dead. The tone is exactly what fans want. Dark, atmospheric, and committed to its own mythology. The world design pulls heavily from voodoo tradition and Louisiana Gothic imagery, swamps, rituals, masks, spirits. It has a visual identity that immediately sets it apart from every other horror game releasing around it. Combat mixes the living world and dead side in interesting ways, giving you different tools and abilities depending on which side of reality you're operating in. Details on the full scope of the game are still coming in, but the direction is clear and confident. Shadow Man: Dark Legacy looks like a proper return for one of gaming's most underrated horror franchises. A Halloween game sounds obvious in retrospect, one of the most iconic horror villains of all time. A simple, brutal concept: Michael Myers is coming, and there is nowhere safe to go. But the history of slasher games is full of failures. Getting this right is harder than it looks. From what's been shown, this one understands the assignment. The game pulls from the original Carpenter films, the slow-moving, unstoppable Myers. Not the supernatural version, not the reboot version, the original one. The shape in the dark that just keeps walking toward you, no matter what you do. That version of Michael Myers is terrifying, specifically because he doesn't run, doesn't react to pain, and cannot be reasoned with. A game built around that concept, where the horror is a force of nature rather than a creature to fight, has real potential. The gameplay leans into asymmetric horror, surviving, hiding, managing resources, and dealing with the fact that the thing hunting you is never going to stop. Haddonfield looks faithfully recreated, and the atmosphere captures that specific suburban nightmare that made the original film so effective. Halloween is still building toward its release window, but for fans of the franchise and slasher horror in general, this one is already looking like the game Michael Myers deserves. Lovecraftian horror is one of those things that sounds easy to adapt and almost never is. The problem is that Lovecraft's whole concept, that the universe is indifferent and vast and humans are completely insignificant within it, is hard to make into a game without it just becoming monsters in the dark. Cthulhu: The Cosmic Abyss seems to understand that distinction. The game is built around cosmic horror in the true sense, not just tentacles and deep ones, but the psychological weight of discovering that everything you thought was real and stable is built on top of something ancient and uncaring that barely registers your existence. The sanity system is central to how it plays. The more you discover, the more your grip on reality loosens. And unlike most games where sanity is just a health bar, this one seems to use it to actually distort what you see, hear, and experience. Puzzles, exploration, careful investigation. This is not a game that gives you a shotgun and lets you blast your way through the horror. It puts you in the role of someone slowly uncovering something that was better left buried. The visual design is genuinely impressive. Coastal towns, underwater ruins, skies that feel wrong. Cthulhu: The Cosmic Abyss is coming 2026 and 2027. And for fans of real cosmic horror, this is exactly the kind of game the genre needs. That is the list. 10 horror games that are going to make 2026 and 2027 genuinely exciting for anyone who loves being scared. Whether you want psychological dread, survival pressure, iconic slashers, or cosmic nightmare, something on this list is built for you. Drop in the comments which one has you most nervous in the best possible way. If you want more content like this, best upcoming games, hidden gems, genre deep dives, subscribe, because that is exactly what this channel delivers. See you in the next one.